So The Flash has been out for a couple of days now, and with the public's perception, you either really like and admire this movie, or you could think it's a complete waste of time and could have gotten scrapped with the Batgirl movie. Now with that out of the way, let's get right into this video. So I've seen this movie a total of 2 times now, and I can tell you that the first time I had seen it, I came out of it thinking it was probably the most bottom of the barrel DC movie we had gotten, which is completely wrong, by the way. There's a lot worse. But I'd say that changed with my second time watching the movie for sure. I think going into this movie though, the best thing you could probably do for yourself is just manage your expectations. Just go into this movie with the mindset that it's supposed to be a fun and wacky adventure, crazy moments here and there with interesting scenery for sure. And just try to manage and not expect a endgame level of events, that happen within this movie. Because this is an ending of the universe, we've been with this since Man of Steel 2013. And now, it's finally coming to a close. And also knowing the confusion this movie brings with all the stuff it does, such as the ending. Like George Clooney's Batman, him and Keaton's Batman are supposed to be like the same in their universe, but I think what they're doing is, the fans can come to a consensus that Keaton and Clooney's Batman just at this point take place in 2 different universes, because there's no way they can be the same. So tangent aside, I do think this movie does a good job at showing us the progression of accepting failure in just a few scenes. Though certain moments in this movie can have emotional beats and don't always land with pulling my heartstrings, I can definitely say that I felt something, when Barry gets to see his mother for the last time. See, if you know anything about the Flash, 1, he's fast, hence the fastest man alive title, and 2, his whole life has been trying to prove his father's innocence, when it was believed that he had actually committed this heinous crime against Barry's mother years prior. So seeing as this is a comic book movie, it's inspired from the Flashpoint series, seeing the Flash run through time against the advice of his peers, he's determined on saving his mother's life at that night. But it didn't go as planned in either the book or the movie. It's about superhero backstories, so it's like that's the definitive thing, when it comes to these characters in the media. Their backstory will always be the same. And actually what goes wrong in these universes are having fixed points. See, Keaton's Batman basically explains to us that time alteration isn't as simple as making a new path in time and keeping the past intact. Traversing and changing in time will end up causing these fixed points to blend with old and new events. And throughout the movie we see the events of Man of Steel happen, but in this universe the fixed point is that Zod finally wins and destroys Earth. And with this new timeline you have Barry 1, which is our original Barry, and then you have Barry 2, who's a much younger and quirkier Barry, who basically decides to try and save his timeline that was created by our Barry later in the movie, when we realize that this universe is destined, or this Earth is destined to die. And needless to say, nothing's gonna fix this definite moment in time, besides Barry going back and undoing what his goal was from the very beginning, which was saving his mother from the night she was supposed to meet her fate, and ultimately failing this timeline. He goes back to that day. And I do gotta say, this movie does work for me, not just because I get my tears moving like fucking knife cutting through paper, but it means essentially that, for this timeline to escape destruction from Zod, Barry's gonna have to run through time once more, failing his journey and preserving his mother's life. So yes, being one of the saddest parts of the movie, we end up seeing Barry watch as his past self puts the can of tomatoes in her cart and then runs off, setting the events of the movie. And what works well, and I do gotta say is a strong point of the movie, is probably their interaction together with him and his mother. So unbeknownst to Nora, her grown son is in front of her from a future timeline, and she does ask him what's wrong as she sees a tear running down his face. So our emotional Barry ends up telling her that he's in town to see his mother, and seeing that he's sad, she goes in and hugs him and tells him that his mother is very lucky to have him. And I'll say this emotional moment does give Barry kind of a last bit of closure, he'll ever get with his mother. And as she caresses his face, Barry slows down time once more. He starts to stare in her eyes, getting sadder and sadder. He moves away to the cart and takes the tomatoes that once place altering her life in this timeline, further cementing that he does have to live with this kind of failure of never getting to have his perfect timeline with her, loving her more and loving her first. Not just giving us one last beautiful moment with these characters, but Barry ends up leaving knowing that she'll always be alive somewhere in time, just not for him. And I gotta say, I love this scene in the movie, not only because it shows us Batfleck was right in the beginning while telling Barry that their scars that they have are what makes them who they are, further cementing, Barry isn't broken because of his past, and while yes, the movie clearly shows how it has changed his life, but in the grand scheme of things, it makes him the strong and morally cemented character we've come to love throughout all these years. And with that out of the way, I just want to say this movie is not the greatest superhero movie ever, and I don't expect it to be. But what we've gotten, it has its flaws and bumps along the road, but taking it for what it is, I think we can find some beauty in it. So at the end of the day, I hope you guys really liked this video, though. I just thought this was a neat point in the movie that I'd like to talk about to you guys in a little quick breakdown video, and I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on what you felt about the movie and if you thought it did good or it could have been better in areas. So, Hunnera, as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Alright, let's name some times that Barry has traveled through time. Flash TV show, Justice League, Dark Apocalypse War, Snyder Cut, Crest's Infinite Earths, Pick a New 52 story, Flashpoint graphic novel, Flashpoint Paradox, Justice League Society, World War II.